It's an exciting time for your library finding a new leader. It's also exciting that you have so many community members who wish to be part of the process. I'm a little concerned that only one trustee wants to be part of the hiring committee. As a reminder, only the trustees can officially vote on whom to hire. The community members provide input, and the hiring committee can provide a recommendation to the trustee board. But it's the trustee board as a whole, ultimately, who are empowered to make the hiring decision. As regards your questions, I had asked her about if we have to follow the open meeting laws, et cetera, for the committee meetings. Her response was open meeting law. I would recommend that the hiring committee follow open meeting law and all its requirements, even if there's only one trustee on the committee, in order to serve the open meeting law processes of transparency and open participatory government. Whether you are legally required to do so is a good question. Since the hiring committee is of the trustees, it may be required to follow open meeting law, even though it doesn't have a quorum, per what the Secretary of State says on the website, Vermont Gov Media Open Meeting Laws 2019 PDF. However, I cannot give legal advice. So I'm going to recommend that you bring this question to the Tunbridge Town Administration and see if they can help you connect to the VT League of Cities and Towns Municipal Assistance Center for their legal assistance if you would like to determine if you legally have to follow open meeting law. Regarding members of your board, I had asked her if we could even meet with only 4 of us since we're required to have 5 on our board. If your bylaws state that you have 5 seats on your board, you only need 3 people to official board business and hold board meetings, unless your bylaws have some other definition of quorum for them. Our bylaws do state that we have 5 seating on our board. So with 4 trustee seats filled, you should be fine meeting and voting on things.
Vern, I think
who
you
can
froze.
Be on the hiring committee. Her statement is the library trusts whomever they think would be helpful in recommending a committee to the trustees to hire. And then it follows with the recommendations of who gets to, but the hiring committee does not decide who gets hired, et cetera, then the trustee board gets to vote on whom to accept or not. And those are her responses to us. Thanks, Kathy.
Vern, what was the rest of that agenda item?
Sorry.
You're muted.
Yeah. Sorry. The next on the agenda was to determine the members of the committee.
Okay, so there wasn't any. Okay.
It appears that everyone who had submitted a request to be included in the committee is here. Let's see all the names. I don't know how to proceed. We read all when a 6 respond after the deadline. Perhaps we won't include if that person.
There was a question that had come
Persons.
up earlier that I think is no longer a question that needs to be asked. I'm just going to bring it up because it had come up in a previous meeting, and that was whether people from outside of town could be on the committee. And my understanding with the 6 people, including the person who was after the deadline, is that all of those people are residents of Tunbridge. So that no longer is a question. I just wanted to say that because it had come up earlier.
Right.
Do you want to read the names of all the people, or?
I can do so if you.
Okay.
Kathy Termy, Anna Deckert, Ann Mallory, Jenna Young, and Teresa Fitzgerald. And the 6th person who responded after the deadline, I don't know how important that is. Do we include that person in the committee?
I want to, I guess, ask the question. This actually would determine that discussion is how big a committee do we want it to be? So if everyone, including the 6th person plus you,
Yes.
is on the committee, that's a 7-person committee. Do we feel that is too large a committee?
I think that might be a little large. I think I recall Kathy mentioning experience with smaller committees being more successful. Seems like an arbitrary number, but 5 seems like an adequate number to me, but I don't really have any evidence to base that off of. It's just sort of my gut feeling says that 5 should be adequate.
Could I also jump in just before we go any further? For maybe 2 weeks ago, I sent in an application. So it's
Really?
Catherine Fries here.
Oh,
Really? Oh.
Uh-huh.
oh, I
Oh.
did, yeah.
And I did end the application by saying that I would be glad to be in the background, just answering questions, since I've been associated with the library for close to 40 years and all. I don't necessarily have to be on the committee, but I'm just curious to what happened.
Catherine,
Yeah.
where did you send the application?
To the Tunbridge trustees. Yep.
We, all of us looked at that, at our email account, and none of us saw your
Yeah. Okay.
Do you
email.
Okay.
also just, I'm wondering, there was a time, there was a day when there was some problem with Google. And I know that Carrie had answered a couple of emails that were returned. And so perhaps you sent yours in at that same time and it never arrived.
Okay, so I'm going to take that as a sign that we have plenty of qualified people, and that's wonderful. I just do want to reiterate that I was the director for 13 years and was a trustee for 6 years and did run the book sale for 20 years and have been a librarian for 40 years in public library and school library. And I love libraries and I love ours. And I would be glad to be in the background if you have any questions about specific library things or Tunbridge library history. Okay.
Can I jump in for a second?
Duly noted.
Okay, great.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Done.
I can withdraw my name. My mom is dying right now, and I'm not sure, I'll have the time or bandwidth to, help. But I would love to be, I've been volunteering in the library for 30 years, been a trustee, and same as Catherine's way longer than, not way longer, but I'm glad to help whatever way I can, but the meetings might be, I don't want to commit to something right now like that. So that's new. So I can withdraw my name.
I
So,
Oh, I was going to say, I think that we should accept Catherine's, because I do know that there was a problem with the internet.
Yeah.
And,
I just went back and scrolled through our email account and I don't see it at all. Unfortunately, I'm looking back all the way to the first week of November. So unfortunately,
Okay, and I
things
am
have gone awry.
I'm not taking it personally at all. And I'm just glad to be a reference if it becomes relevant.
I don't see any reason why you couldn't be appointed to the committee.
Thank you, Billy. But it does look like we're trying to balance the number of people on the committee with seeing that different constituencies are represented, right? So maybe we have a good balance. But thank you. I appreciate your vote of confidence.
so if we look at who we've got now, including Fern, so Fern being the one person from the board, but there is Anna, Teresa, Jenna, and Kathy, and then also Sean. So that would be a total of 6 if we include everybody. Do we want to look at a number smaller than 6? Kathy, when you were saying a small committee, what were you talking about for a small committee?
I was thinking about chiming in on that because Mark, when I heard you say that, I remembered saying that, but size is relative. And I think I was meaning as opposed to like 15 to 20 people. Because
Okay.
there were, I
Yeah.
think, 39 people on that meeting when, and there were so many people interested that I just said, well, be careful, about how big your committee is, because sometimes you can't get anything done because you have to give everyone equal voice at the table, and that's hard.
Yeah.
So I think when I said small, if I had to put a number on it, probably fewer than 8 people. Mark said 5, I think. Probably, especially when you look at the size of your trustees, is pretty small, but boy, having more heads is better than one for sure on this kind of thing.
Before you chimed in, Kathy, I was actually just about to say, at the risk of contradicting myself, I think it's important that we keep it definitely, under 10. And like I said, 5 just was sort of an arbitrary number, but I think that if we have this level of interest and engagement, that we should not, exclude people. So, I mean, if 5 becomes 6, I don't really see any issue with that. I think I see more benefits to that, because it's still not out of control, but we've got this really, this level of passion and engagement. So, I think 6 would be totally reasonable.
To look at, if I don't know, you're the trustees who received the applications. I think it's important not just to balance constituencies, but it's important to balance skills. And I'm just looking at Jenna's message. I would not let Jenna off easily if she applied, because I don't know what the skills of the other people are, because there's some of them I don't even know. But Jenna has amazing human resources skills, and I have some surface human resources knowledge and limited experience, but I would value Jenna's input for the real HR knowledge. So it's not just constituencies, but I think it's those applications and what people said their skills were that they can contribute.
There's a very diverse interest and expertise by everyone's got different expertise, which would be invaluable in this committee.
I had kind of grouped people together in my head to have it be different categories of expertise and sort of constituencies, and partly that was because I knew a chunk of the people and could kind of put them in a group where some of the people I don't know. But as far as given, I'm not going to include Fern in this, sorry, Fern, but Fern has library experience. I'll say that piece to it. But of the other 5 people, we have 2 people who are newer to town. One of those people has experience with university admissions as well as some other work along those lines. The other has experience in publishing, but also in libraries. Kathy, you have a ton of administrative experience, also experience with nonprofits. As you said, Jenna's got the experience with human resources. And we have an educator, a retired educator who has been on the board and has the experience of the treasurer of the board, which for me, not being on the committee, I kind of like that piece to it. And then we have Catherine with all the experience that she mentioned. I'm not putting you on the committee, volunteering to be a consultant for the committee and to be able to give information about the history and about the library itself. So there was just a comment too about making sure that what Kathy just said, but also just someone else saying to make sure that we've got the different groups. And it's really with that 6 people, a big spread of experience and expertise. Good
Can I
group.
make a comment? Maybe after Teresa.
Just a quick question. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Teresa.
Do we need to be an odd number? Is there any reason? Would there anything come up where if you had a 3-3 input that you would need an odd number for any? I don't know that we'd have any voting rights, but that was just the one thought I had.
I personally feel that, Catherine, that you should be on the committee and not just a consultant, because the one thing that you have is experience throughout all of the years of the library, which I don't think anyone else has that in-depth knowledge.
And then we have an odd number.
Can I just add a comment that's a bit off topic, but certainly relates? Whether I'm on the committee or not, I would find it difficult to be on a committee, interview and recommend a candidate unless I was really, really clear what the charge of that job is going to be. And I think 2 meetings ago, I missed the last one, so I might say 2 meetings ago, when I listened in, I wasn't clear in my mind if there was clarity on what the role actually was. It sounded like there was a combination of like administrative work. Anyway, so whenever you decide the committee mix, if I just put that HR hat on for a moment, it would probably be most successful if it had clarity of what the job description is, so it can evaluate applicants based on their strengths as they relate to the position you're looking to hire for. I hope that makes sense.
That's
Yes,
part
it
of what
does.
the committee is going to do.
Read the
We're
job
going to
description.
reiterate the questions to be asked and answered by the committee, and that is very much a part of the responsibility of the committee to determine what is the job and what is the job description and what it all entails.
So
think-
Jenna, this goes back to what happened over the fall. That part of it was the trustees were basing it on certain assumptions about the job description, and it's kind of felt that maybe there needs to be we need to look at it again, and that was part of it. It's not starting from scratch. I mean, we certainly have job descriptions that have been in place up to this point.
So is the committee, maybe is it a 2-part? One is to actually create a job description, and the second part is to interview and fill the job? Okay.
The
Thank you.
next on the agenda probably will answer that, your question, Jenna, and bring it clear to all of the people, some of whom may have not been at these meetings or read the minutes from the last, 4 or 5 minute meetings.
So I guess just because for the deciding on the committee piece, now that we've kind of got the numbers sort of discussed, how does the board feel about the one application being included, or the one letter being included, the later one?
I think that's a good idea, and we need to include Catherine too. Then I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in favor as well, Fern.
Okay.
I think 7 is a fine number.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that.
So I move, and I guess we need to vote. I move that we have a committee of 7 including the names that had been read off before. So I'm just going to read first names, sorry. So Catherine, Anna, Teresa, Sean, Jenna, Kathy, and Fern.
Did you add Sean? You did do it. Sean.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, sorry.
My order is actually the order that I found the emails from the trustees email account when I was reading it. So there is a reason for my order, but it has nothing to do with anything.
I think one of the things, Anne said she did not, but it's Anna and not, it's Anna that would be on and not Anne.
Oh, I thought I said Anna. I had changed what I wrote down when you
Yeah,
told
you
me.
did. You did.
Okay.
You changed it.
Okay.
Do we have a motion?
I'm in
I move
favor.
that be the committee. The committee consists of those 7 people.
I second.
Yep, I as well.
In favor?
Yes. I'm
Yes.
sorry, you can't see
I
me.
can't
Yes.
see. I can't see.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, gang,
so
I'm cooking dinner.
unanimous. I got my agenda on my phone now.
Okay. Oh, and yeah, the next on the agenda is to reiterate the questions to be asked and answered by the committee. I did write down the 4 points, the 4 main points that we had discussed back in the December 21st meeting. So let me read those off. And the possible expansion of directors' point was to rethink the job description. The 3rd point was to discuss position parameters and reopen the search. And the 4th point was to reach out to the community for their ideas regarding what they need from their library.
I would say that points 1 and points 2 are actually the same topic. So if we're thinking about the charge for the committee, that the expansion of the hours, the responsibility, and relooking at the job description is a single item. So determining the job description for this position, which would include those things. And reopening the search and the wording that you had there. And then the last thing was the community input piece. I think as far as Jenna's question earlier was concerned, that I remember part of the discussion of that was that it doesn't need to be necessarily a huge public meeting, that it could be a survey of some sort, or it could be a public meeting, but that it wasn't meant to be necessarily months and months long. I think this might have come up in the discussion about having an interim or not, that the input could be scheduled so that it wasn't going to bring this up to May or something. But some kind of public input into the process. Jenna, did you have any other questions about that from the 2 meetings?
No, I think I didn't understand that the committee's charge would be to determine the role of the actual job, which in my mind, I'm thinking includes things like the degree you're looking for, years of experience, and the actual candidate pool. I was thinking that the trustees would be developing that, but I can see how that can come with a committee of people who are recommending what their role should be back to the trustees. And then once that's solidified and approved, you're then writing an ad, I presume, to attract candidates based on that role.
Yeah.
Is that what you was?
Yeah, and part of this was to take that away from the trustees and have it be more of a public, and bring in people with more expertise to do that.
Kathy's asking if all current library employees have job descriptions. Yes, they do.
Yes. And there's information that the committee can have, that we have and that we were using, which includes things like under each of the job descriptions, how many hours recently or historically those jobs have entailed throughout the month. I mean, we do things monthly, so that piece. Part of this also is that we're going from a salaried librarian to an hourly one. So that, just kind of with no other decision, that piece to it was something that came up for us. There are reasons that have nothing to do with the library, which is why that happened. So the hourly, how many hours is it conversation just kind of had to happen because it's not salaried anymore.
Could I ask, is it possible for us to get some information before our first meeting as a committee, things like the job descriptions that are written out and the information from Laura Keenan, just so we can prep a little before our meeting? Can that work?
Yeah. So, yeah. So are we set with the, is that specific enough, or should we be more specific in our wording, those 3 topics? I guess I'm asking the committee because now you exist.
So I'm just trying to back up a little bit. The is what you're working on right now the committee description, or like the charge of the committee?
Charge of the committee.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to write it out so all the committee members like have the same charge written out. And I don't know if you want the committee to establish the timeline or if the trustees are establishing the timeline with maybe some benchmarks. I mean, maybe it could be done together. I don't know. But I'm thinking of kind of order of events too. And I don't know if you want this committee at all, if you want to back up to the point of notification of Jean's retirement, because I think there's a lot of public relations issues that there's baggage that comes with this committee work. And so I don't know if you want this committee to address any of that or make recommendations on any of that, or if the trustees are going to handle that. But I think when like a posting goes out to our local community, it really needs to be prefaced with announcement of Jean's retirement, or maybe that just needs to come before the first posting. So I don't know. So I'm thinking about an order of events and things that need to happen to also establish really positive community relations around this.
Yeah, I think that's a point well taken, Kathy. Just that there are certainly still people in our community that just don't know that this is happening right now.
So
I don't see the harm in an additional warning where we just kind of get people up to date.
So I think that maybe Kathy, that coming up with a timeline might be something that at the first meeting would be a good thing to do. That I think writing that timeline at this meeting, I think it's a very good thing to do.
I'm just wondering when it is, and would you expect the communication to go like whenever the committee has meetings? Does Fern then report back to the trustees? Because some things might need the trustees to decide on, because the committee members do not have authority, are not going to be voting on anything. So is it like, okay, we finish this, Fern presents it to the trustees and the trustees come back with yes, that works, that job description works, whatever? Because I don't think that the committee can decide the job description. I think the trustees ultimately need to. I'm not sure. So when you're writing the charge, I think it needs to include what the authority is, and is Fern the liaison with the trustees to get that approval when it's needed, so we can move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
One of the things is that there will be minutes of the meetings, and they would then be posted. So that would certainly help the communications.
Kathy,
did we also want to mention about the Tunbridge Quarterly, or
I was just going to mention that now. So it's actually on the agenda for Monday's meeting, our regular meeting. Right. We had put an article in the Tunbridge Quarterly that wasn't published about Jean retiring. So one of the agenda items for Monday's meeting is what to do about that. And what I was thinking, because the next quarterly doesn't come out until for April 1st. something has to be done instead, because that was part of our publicity and it didn't happen. So it's currently on our agenda. So I agree with you that the timing needs to happen in a certain order, and that needs to be more of a formal announcement with, some other details to it. And it is something we're planning to talk about on Monday.
Eve, if I could just,
Mhm.
I did take the liberty of looking at the agenda that Fern, I believe, posted for this evening. And Fern, I'm not sure if you have it. I only have what I've handwritten down to look at. But if we go back to the beginning, it started with the expert info from the Vermont Library Consult, where I picked up the open meeting laws. But then I felt like I had a little slot maybe there for duties. And then there was something about the trustee obligations. Do you think the things we're trying to iron out would be the duties of the committee? The committee would be expected to set a timeline. Obviously review applicant, do the application process. I think those kind of maybe fall out of the actual questions we'll be answering. Those would be more duties, the actual posting of the job and the timeline, all of that information. I don't know. Jenna, Kathy, you guys are real versed in this stuff. What do you think? Shouldn't those be kind of written down and pretty concrete for us to work from?
Yeah, I guess that was my initial question is, I may have just made assumptions. I thought the committee was an interview committee. I thought it was looking at recruitment, looking at resumes, and then interviews, conducting interviews. Not sure about reference checks, if that would have concluded or not, and then making a recommendation for hire. I wasn't clear that there was a further development piece on what the actual job description was, which personally, while I have some HR experience, I don't know that I know our library well enough to necessarily say what the job of that role should be. And I was starting to type a question into the comment box. It was probably easier to ask it here. I like questions like, I heard salary versus hourly. Is that up for discussion? Has that been decided? I'm assuming this is a town employee position. How does the role of this job compare with other town employee positions versus exempt or non-exempt? And so I'm not really, I guess that leaves me wondering, like, so what is the role of the committee versus the trustees, who are the decision makers around some of the frame around what this job is?
I can answer the question about the hourly versus salaried. It's a salaried part-time position, and it was the opinion of the town treasurer that salaried part-time didn't. There were some changes to the federal law under that situation, and that her feeling was that the position should turn to an hourly part-time rather than a salary part-time because of that law.
Does it affect benefit eligibility for benefits?
It actually doesn't affect benefits because, we were assuming, we set it at 20 hours and we're going with the town benefits. And there are benefits that are involved with that. I'm kind of glad Teresa's on the committee because, I guess I could be a person who would show up to a meeting to talk about this, but one of the things that I was doing in the fall was just kind of looking at the pool of money that we have right now in salary and benefits, and looking at how a change in benefits would affect this position. And there is a point when the number of hours that this position has, the Vermont League of Cities and Town has retirement as well, and 20 hours is not that point. But adding hours, I don't have the numbers in front of me because I wasn't planning to discuss this today, but adding a certain number of hours to that, you're then under the retirement plan, which costs money. I mean, it's not undoable. We have, depending on how hours are switched around, that's something that could happen. I think that the decision that we're going with, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm not even speaking for the board, I think. But it was recommended to us by the library consultant back at the beginning, pre-COVID, when we met with her, that as a municipal library, we should be using the town's benefit structure. So that, I would say, is not up for discussion. That is what we're assuming that we're doing. And the reason we're going to hourly is because the treasurer recommended that to me. So I'm doing both of those things because of information from the town, as well as from the library consultant. So that piece, I guess, isn't up for it. It's like if we hit a certain number of hours a week or a number of hours a month, it would then automatically become this type of benefit. And at some point, somebody needs to figure out if we have enough money. But I'm feeling with shifting around that that's not a big issue with this. The assumption was made in the planning that we've budgeted for that type of position.
So can I ask, while we have the benefit of all the trustees, so we will be delineating the job description. Will the number of hours be set? Is that what you said? Because in addition to the director, we also have some other positions in the library.
Mm-hmm.
But are we starting with, we know that the position that we are interviewing for is 20 hours a week? Is that true?
No, that was something that was how can I put this? The fact that we're having this committee and we're going through the process again, assumptions that were made earlier, which included the fact that we were going with the job description as it currently is, and then all the other jobs as they currently are, was where the 20 hours came from.
Okay.
So if it's the feeling of a group re-looking at that situation, that the position should be more than 20 hours, it does not need to be 20 hours. That was what the board was working with earlier, and we're opening up that discussion now.
Okay, can I just say one more thing? Will you be at that first meeting, or Therese, are you up to date on, if we were to say we would like it 25 hours a week, how that impacts benefits? I mean, that's not something that I don't think we'll know on the committee, right?
I can come to the meeting. I didn't want to be on the committee because I'm not running for a re-election, and I didn't want to change my role in the middle of the process. And actually, I with work, I don't have time to deal with it, but I'm perfectly happy to be there and answer those questions. And I still have all my notes from Becky that I worked with originally.
And to piggyback on that, Eve, Catherine, I'm very comfortable, communicating with Eve to bring any information that the committee needs to have. And I vaguely remember Becky and I having a conversation when I was trustee about these laws that she was aware of. It's part of her job is to know what's coming down the pipe, and the salary versus hourly is something we've looked at. I've also looked in the last town report, and we do know what we have to work with, from your budget point, and how that breaks down for the actual jobs that are filled now. So I think we have some information already available to us.
Great.
To think about. But can I just say that I'm just getting a sense, I have been following the meetings. I have been reading the minutes with the board way back before the hiring even started. And it's my general feeling that this is like a blank slate. Is that true? We're not pulling applications that have already been received. We're starting with a new description of this job, hours. There'll be some things, obviously, the financial, and some pieces that'll remain. But is that a good way to present this going forward? That this is just a fresh start, so to speak?
I guess I'm the one unmuted. That is my understanding.
Okay.
I think
That's
that
my understanding as well. Yeah.
And I think that was part of the problem, that when the board looked at the 20-hour position, the other positions we were expecting them to remain as they were. And since that doesn't look like it's going to be the case, that's the reason that the hours for the director would have to change. But that would also mean that the other hours for the other employees would also be changing as well.
And this has been brought up to the trustees a number of times, that it's the trustees' position, or a part of the job of the trustee is to hire the director and to determine the director's position. But the positions, the other positions are the responsibility of the director. So we would not be saying this many hours is going to go here, this many hours is going to go here, as part of really budgeting, after we've determined the director position. So this would not be part of the, I guess I'm just explaining it, that it wouldn't actually be part of what the committee is doing, because the committee would just be looking at the director. There would be the pool of money, the pool of hours that are left over given the current budget, and the budget that hasn't been voted yet, but would come up at town meeting, has already been submitted for the town report. That's what we're working with. So it was based on 20 hours plus status quo when that budget went in, which is based on what currently is happening. And it would just be, we're taking this out for the director plus benefits, and this is what's left over for everything else, and the director will say what that is. Does that make sense?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Did the total amount of money for salary and benefits go down in the newest budget?
No, it didn't go up by much, though. I'll have those, I can bring those exact numbers. I can either give them to Teresa or show up to the first meeting and have them. And I didn't bring them for this meeting.
I guess
I based it on information that I had from Becky about what benefits cost prior to October. And then I did an increase of what I thought the increase in health insurance was based on historical increases, and built that into it. I mean, it was based on numbers I made up based on reality, I guess.
Can I ask a question about this topic? I guess it feels like there's some, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what word I'm looking for, but maybe flexibility here. It sounds like you're saying it doesn't have to be exactly 20 hours, it could be a little more, but there's also a little bit of the chicken and the egg going on here. Mm-hmm. Like, if the committee is writing the job description, but there's a budgetary constraint on how many hours it can fund, like, you need to make sure the job description fits within the number of hours so that it's reasonable. And from my bird's eye view of library operations in the 20 years I've been a patron, I've always felt like, oh my gosh, when at town meeting, when I see the budget and I saw the library director salary, I mean, my jaw dropped when I first saw it. I thought that just doesn't seem adequate for that kind of position for all the programming the library puts out. But I didn't really know the mechanics and I didn't ask questions. So I don't know that my gut reaction is reasonable or realistic with the actual situation. But I guess now that I'm hearing this conversation, I want to ask the question, like, is 20 hours a week adequate for the library director position? And I asked a question in the chat, like, how many hours is the library open? I'm just curious, if the library is open more than 20 hours a week and the director is expected to be there all those hours, does that even work? And then are there hours outside before the library opens and after the library closes that the director is responsible for? So I'm just trying to figure out, and if the trustees aren't responsible for hiring the other employees that the library director has, I mean, it's a big puzzle that all fits together. Yeah. And I'm not sure the committee should be drafting that description. Maybe the committee looks at it or gives some input, but really, isn't that a puzzle that the trustees kind of need to work out? So I don't know. I guess right now I'm just a little bit confused about that piece of this committee charge.
There have been, and this, Kathy, it kind of connects to what you're saying, and some things that have come up in the chat, but there's a lot of information that I think would go into it. which includes all the current job descriptions, information about the numbers, that all is information that you could all get prior to the first meeting. I think information from the current library staff about that would be good information to have with that decision. I guess, in the end, that the committee wouldn't be making any decisions, and it would all be to a certain extent. I mean, you're making decisions, but they have to go to the trustees. So it's kind of like a strong advisory position for it. And I'd like the other trustees to jump in on this, because I'm kind of talking around something. We kind of went with it one way, and the feeling was that what we did needed to be kind of opened up to more input and more consideration, and that our decision was too narrow.
Okay, I guess
So,
I'm
yeah.
starting to clarify what I'm thinking, and I hear what you're doing. I would want to make sure, if the trustees are charging the committee with writing the job description, and there's a constraint on the budget of how many hours this position can have, that job description be realistic, because I have written job descriptions before, and it's really easy to get really lofty really fast about all the amazing things you want to fit into a job description. And then it becomes really hard to find any one single person who has all of those things that can fill that job description. And then, oh my goodness, like that's a full-time job, like the way we wrote that job description. So I just want to make sure it's realistic and that the trustees are on the same page with how that works.
I think when you see all the job descriptions, that you can, that will give a good picture to everything that is done. And the question is some of what the other positions are doing going to move back into the director position, or that would be part of what would be discussed, which doesn't necessarily have to be just the opinion of the committee. It could be the opinion with, well, not that Catherine's on it, because she'll have all the information about the library.
And what I appreciate,
coming,
I appreciated what Teresa asked earlier when she said to clarify, is this a fresh start? I think it's a fresh start, but not a blank slate, because I think we have a lot of information we can look at, but it's kind of restarting the process fresh, taking a new look at it. But it's not like you want us to draft things without looking at anything. Like we get to see what the job descriptions are. And I just read with Jenna's comment, and that's definitely along the lines of what I was thinking about. So thank you.
Yeah, there is a lot of information to give you to start with. It's not, we're not starting a new library or saying we don't want anything that's like what we're doing right now. Let's reinvent the library. Like I don't, that's not the intention.
I think that part of it was the understanding of what were going to be the job description for the director, as opposed to the job descriptions of the other employees. And it seems that that maybe the division that we decided on is not what the community would like to see. And I think what we're saying is we have a certain amount of money, and depending on how many hours the director has will determine how many hours that are available for the other employees. So it's something, this is what we have, and it's a matter of what do we want the director to do, as opposed to what do we want the other employees to do.
The Tunbridge Library has always relied heavily on volunteers.
I'm just gonna go grab something that has to do with this.
Yeah, Billy, I want to say, I think, it sounds like we're all kind of thinking roughly along the same lines. And this is definitely going to be a work in progress. And there'll probably be many times when the committee will have to, submit to the board. This is where we are so far. And are we on the right track? And is this something you can support? Because again, the ultimate decision will be to the board. And with the actual description of that director piece. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth with input from the board and then the committee taking that, almost like we've been given an assignment and work with that piece and then kind of check in and say, well, we're this far along and now what do you think? But, I don't know that it can be spelled out exactly the way it's going to play out. But as long as we have guidelines to get us started, I mean, it's not set in stone. Can we revise things as we go? In our committee expectations, as long as we're, all open and upfront and on the same page, sort of.
Could I ask something sort of following up on that? And maybe it's of the other committee members. Do we feel comfortable setting the timeline by ourselves? Because Therese, just listening to you, I realize, I mean, this could expand. This could take a lot longer than maybe we wanted to, because we have to balance the fact that we also need to have a working librarian there. I mean, we've got the team in place now, but we don't have an infinite amount of time to do this. So I don't know if it's the trustees who want to give us a general guideline. Maybe March was what Carrie was mentioning last meeting, but I guess I'd like to know, the committee, are we coming up with the timeline, or trustees, or are we doing it together? And I realize the timeline will be flexible, but I would feel happy having some boundaries to our exploration. Yeah.
I think that probably is a good idea. Certainly the part about making the decision about what the job descriptions and the hours might be is something that we probably could make a definite date for. But as far as the ads and interviewing and things, I think that would have to be more flexible.
There was some discussion about the short time that we had, because Jean had said she was going to retire in December, and the short time that we had to actually advertise the job and meet with the applicants and work through that process. It was, I think, discussed by the community members as well as the trustees at various meetings, that the timeline for that process that we did as trustees was way too short. So it was our timeline. We had like 2 months to do the whole thing, right?
Yeah, we started in September, but realistically it was October and half of November.
Right.
So I would say it was 2 months.
Yeah. So that was mentioned.
It was
that
fast.
People thought that was way too short a time frame.
So I see two pieces of this as kind of happening up front before a position could be advertised, and that piece. So I'd like to have that not be part of a timeline at this point, so that the second piece of it, the big chunk of bringing a candidate forward to the trustees to vote on. But the community input piece to this, and also the putting together a job description for a director with all that entails, I think can, to a certain extent, happen simultaneously. I think a little bit of community input can go into the decision for that. They're not exclusive things, but they don't have to happen sequentially. Does that kind of make sense to people? Could that be done in a month?
I think that's reasonable, personally.
I do too. And I feel like we need to be really focused and efficient.
Mhm.
So I'd like to propose that as benchmark number one for a timeline. And then that after, when that happens, we can discuss with the committee a timeline for the recruiting or advertising and interviewing and so forth of a candidate. But what's today's date? 9th?
5th. January 5th.
Oh,
Yeah.
January 5th. Yeah, the 9th is Saturday. What day of the week is February 1st?
Monday,
A Monday.
31st, I'm looking at my calendar, says is Sunday, so.
Do you want to set a deadline of February 1st, and that there can be, well, last month I'm in this position, I'm making myself meetings, a joint meeting of the committee and the board on Monday, February 1st, to finalize those things. I would hope that there were discussions during the process, but like the formal discussion of the outcome of those two things, February 1st, Monday. I'm making this up. People can disagree with me.
Eve, can you reiterate what the joint meeting will
So
include?
that
I got part
for
of
the
it, but I
next,
didn't get
for
it
the
all.
next month before February 1st, and people can jump in and say that that's totally unreasonable, that the two charges that were kind of generally described, so one of them is the community input piece, and then also the coming up with a job description with all that entails, which has to do with the possible expansion of hours, responsibility of the position, the formal job description that we would be advertising with. And just to throw out to the committee what we used, what we gave the candidates last time was essentially the job description that Jean gave us for the director. We were using the job description as it is right now. That was what people were given. So, you know, coming up with a job description, looking at the possible expansion of, or definition of hours. It's not really an expansion of hours because we're jumping to this new situation where it's hourly and not salaried. So defining the hourly piece, defining the responsibilities, coming up with a job description. So that would be one thing. And then the second thing would be determining how to get community input and what exactly the community input would be on. That would be part of it as well. So two pieces, and getting a deadline of February 1st and planning a meeting of both groups on that day.
Eve, if you think about it, the fact that we have to get this information together to give to the committee, that would really be only 3 weeks to do that.
Okay.
So
No,
wondering if
I'm
maybe-
just making up a day. So
Right, well, as I was looking at the calendar and it's already Tuesday, so we figure if we get that information to the committee by the end of the week, that would only be 3 weeks for them. So perhaps it should be the following week, and that's
that
our,
Monday is a regular meeting of the trustees.
so would we want to maybe say do it on a Tuesday, which would be, let me look at the calendar again, which would be the 9th, February 9th, rather than the 1st?
You guys, could I say something? And this is, I feel like kind of classic saying this, but what I keep thinking about is we are talking about two really big, important topics. One is community input, which is a whole matter that if you want to find out what your community is thinking about your library, you do surveys and you do little focus groups and you talk to people, which is wonderful. But I feel like we might have enough on our plate doing the defining of the role and the hiring of the librarian. And I don't mean to say that that having a good input of what your community is looking for is unimportant. I think it's extremely important, but I don't want to stretch our committee too thinly. And I'm just putting it out there.
Catherine, I hear you, but I'm also wondering if the size of our committee, I'm not proposing to create subcommittees on the first night that a committee is started, but I wonder if, you know, when we look at that written charge of the committee, if we pieced things out, if maybe different members of the committee could focus on different things, not each individual, but maybe 3 of us pick one thing and 3 of us pick another thing, are there 6 community members plus Fern, or was it 7 community members plus Fern?
6 plus Fern.
6 plus Fern.
It's 6 plus?
Sure, okay.
So
Great
no,
idea.
I'm putting another idea out there that I think is along those lines, because I agree with you. It's a lot. It's more than a hiring committee if you're doing PR and, you know, all of those things. But I'm just wondering if, like, we look at our skill sets and we can say, you know what, we come together at these meetings, but we break up the work in between. And maybe 3 people draft the survey to the committee together over email. They might not even need to meet. They just go back and forth over email. And then another 3 people are working on a hiring task, like the position postings and things like that. And they do that over email. And then if we meet, we kind of go over the results of that together. I'm not proposing that's the way it should work, but that's an idea, is that maybe not all 7 members of the committee need to do every single task, but we can have short, efficient meetings to work on it. But maybe the take-home work that we do in between could be split up so all of us aren't working on every aspect of it. That might be a way to look at it, but I'm not sure what, I would love to hear what Sean and Anna think too, just to have some different perspectives at the table. And I know everybody has different approaches to things, and my comfort zone is starting with the end and working backwards. What is the end goal? Let's work backwards. Let's set the milestones backwards to get to today. But I know I work with people all the time on teams that are the opposite. They start with what's the very first thing we can get done, and let's get to that end goal. So I'm not sure what other community members are like, but I would love to hear a target date for the first day that someone starts working, you know, that new director. What is that date? And maybe Jean's official retirement date determines that, unless there's going to be an interim or a temporary director. So I'm thinking of things like that too in my head, that we need some way to know what that end goal is, even if it is flexible, so we can set all the milestones between now and then.
Yeah. And I will say that, Kathy, when we did the process in the fall, we actually started with Jean's retirement date at that point, and kind of went backwards, but we condensed it. It was just, you know, and we'll have this week to do interviews, and we'll have, yeah, it was very, very rushed. But given the end date, you know, things happened in the way that they did because of the end date that we had at that point. Somebody just chatted something. I'm just looking. Todd has a question about potential trustees. Can a new trustee be added during this elongated process? I guess, Todd, are you asking if when the select board appoints a new trustee, which is what the plan is at this point, if they can join the committee? Is that what your question is?
I did see
Oh, yeah.
Eve on the Burns posted your agenda for the 11th, and I did note that that's a whole separate issue you're ready to take on then. I don't know if Todd's asking us to think about that now.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what
Yeah.
he was asking about adding in the process. I mean, I can fill people in. It's not meant to be an item today because the question was asked, and I'll just say the same thing as well. John O'Brien called me the week between Christmas and New Year's, actually to make sure that this meeting was Tuesday rather than Monday because of the school meeting. That was actually the real reason for his call. But that on that call, we clarified that the trustees are not choosing a new trustee, that actually isn't the job of the trustees, but that the select board should be appointing someone, and that as people have expressed interest to us and also to Jean, that what we have done is told people to then talk to the select board. And I have not gotten a timeline from the select board about when they would be appointing someone. I haven't heard from anybody since since John called me last week. Has anybody else heard? I put it on the agenda because I was hoping I'd have more than what I just said, but it's possible that what I just said is what will be said at the meeting.
I don't know if this topic should be saved for your regular trust meeting, but when I was at that select board meeting, where they received the resignation from your chair, I was under the impression that that person remains in place until a new person is appointed. So is she still on the trustees?
Uh-oh.
They voted to accept her resignation at the select board meeting.
And
Okay.
she resigned as of the end of the last meeting that she presided over.
She resigned before the select board meeting happened since she submitted the resignation. So if you're an elected official, I think there's an order to events for resigning. And I think you have to submit the letter to the select board and you have to remain. You can't say today's my last day. You have to, I believe, someone, if you know the statutes better than me, please chime in. But I think the way I understand it is if you're elected, you can submit your resignation, but you're still in place until it's accepted and I thought replaced. I don't know how that works, but trustees are elected by the town unless someone resigns, then they're appointed by the select board, right? So Todd's question about new trustees would have to be elected by the town, and there's a certain number of positions, but also the select board is working on postponing town meeting. So town meeting is going to be later this year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I believe the state is working with towns on establishing ways to postpone their town meetings for warmer weather so they can be held outside. So it sounded like they had a tentative May date set for town meeting this year. So
Okay, John didn't share that with me when he called.
Yeah.
And also he did not, when I spoke to him, he was talking as though Carrie was done.
But technically she wasn't done the night of her meeting because
Yeah, well, that wasn't that, she had already, because she had submitted the letter, but the select board hadn't met. And it was all like within a day.
I don't think she submitted it in time for them to warn it on their next meeting. So I think there were a few timing issues with that. Because I think she submitted her resignation after they warned their meeting and had their agenda. And their agenda had an employee resignation on it, but not a trustee resignation on it.
Kathy, I actually thank you because I did watch the select board minutes. It's a video if anyone really wants to sit down for 2 hours and 55 minutes. But Kathy, you are outstanding. I really appreciate your input that you gave on behalf of the library and this everything that the trustees and everyone's doing. And I do believe that the letter for resignation was received, but I saw the employee piece on there, but it wasn't the same thing. So I'm not sure how that all played out, but that was great. If no one has caught it, you can move yourself forward on the video until the last, I'd say 30 minutes. And so much good information was exchanged. I thought that was really very helpful.
Yep. So I would just confirm that because I think her resignation was submitted after they warned the meeting and they weren't able to add that to the agenda. So whether or not her resignation has been accepted, it just is a technicality. So that's something to figure out with the select board.
Can I jump in here? So
Is this
this is
Todd?
Todd. Yeah, this is Todd. I finally finished my dinner. I'm sorry about the So my understanding is the select board going to appoint a new trustee to the library board?
Yes.
Okay, so not that my recommendation means much of anything, but I would say when they do that, it should be someone that should be part of the search committee, because my understanding right now is only one trustee has agreed to be part of the search committee. Is that also correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think that there need to be more trustees involved. And I see several potential trustees on this call. And I don't know who the select board will appoint, but that's my hope, because I think that gives a little more balance, and the ultimate decision is going to be up to the trustees. And if there were 2 out of 5, I think that would be a little bit a better percentage.
There were thoughts, Todd, that it should be earlier that it should be a smaller number of trustees on it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if somebody, I think it would be okay for a new trustee to at least join the meetings and be part of it, that they wouldn't be banned from being on the committee because they weren't here at this point. So Kathy, thank you for that information about the meeting. I think because it's an agenda item, if I don't hear from the select board, the problem is the vote's on Saturday. The school vote. I'm just thinking getting a hold of somebody is the timing is not good. I'll try to get a hold of the select board and ask them that question prior to our Monday's meeting, so I have something more to say than what I just said, which was based on the call with John O'Brien.
If I can just jump in real quick, Sean, Kathy's neighbor, actually, right down the driveway, and not just because we're neighbors. Am I saying this? But I do think your idea, Kathy, of especially for this first meeting deadline, the February 9th meeting, to divide and conquer a bit, and some of the committee members take on different tasks. And I think that will allow us to bring forth to the trustees some solid work in that kind of short window of time. And with that said, I would, and I'm not sure how we'll want to divide up the tasks, but I would throw myself forward for kind of drafting some of the maybe the survey questions out to the community, just because that's again kind of aligns with some of the experience I have with just kind of reader and community outreach research that is part of my current job. So I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, when I was listening to things, I was thinking the community input is so critical to this process, because it's kind of what got the trustees to where they are right now with this process. And I just volunteered on 2 school board survey committees this summer and went through the process of how to develop a fair survey to collect community input. And I would be happy to share some of that. So like I would be happy to help on the community input side and kind of the PR side and the face of this, because I think that's where my skill sets are stronger. I'm happy to like look at job descriptions, but I'm not as experienced in that area. And even the overall hiring process, I can help and give a lot of input. But if there's those 2 big tasks, I'm happy to give extra time in between meetings to the community input piece.
I'll just quickly chime in and say, I think even I already had a conversation about the whole salary piece and the hours and how benefits may or may not change. It might be more enticing to someone with a master's if there's a link to a retirement. If that's only a matter of a few more hours, maybe that's something we need to be aware of. So I'm more than glad to, put myself out there for the budget kind of part of things, working with the treasurer as well as Eve, to make sure we have all of our information correct when we're offering what we're offering, whether it be hours or benefits, that everything is accurate and fits within the rest of the town and what's, been good past practice for other town employees, if that sounds appropriate.
Do people feel that, I'm just looking at the agenda items, that the reiterate questions to be answered by the committee, with the understanding that is kind of changing as we go forward, but as far as the next month, that's been clarified enough?
I have a quick question. So I'm Anna. I live on Spring Road. I'm married to Josh Harwood. who you may know his family. He's been here his whole life. So the community input, if the purpose of that is to better understand what the community wants out of the library, it seems like maybe that needs to be somewhat of a sequential process, that trying to put together a job description before having the community input might not make sense. But I guess I'm curious to know kind of what are we hoping to get out of that community input? Is it community input that will help to shape the job description, or is it community input that will serve a different purpose?
Based on Anna, that's a great question. Based on my understanding of all the meetings that I've observed since Thanksgiving, and there've been a lot in that short time frame, it really seems like there was community input desired on, you know, the overall kind of the big picture of the library, which would be part of a visioning process that the director would play a role in. Because the previous director who announced her retirement had been there for 37 years. That's a big change for the community. A lot of people living in the community have only known one library director. The children who have grown up in the community have only known one library director. So if you're going to make a really big change, it might be a good idea to include some community input in that process. So it does seem like there is a sequential order to that community input needs to come first to help shape that. It may not be that the community input drafts the job description, but maybe there are some qualities or characteristics that come out of that input that help mold it a little bit. Maybe not write the whole thing, but add some finishing touches on it. That's my understanding after listening to a lot of conversations. And I also want to mention that the last several library trustees meetings have had a large number of community members at them, like tonight, and that's unusual. So this is kind of something new for the library, but I think we have a much bigger group that hasn't been attending these meetings that might be just as interested in the library, that maybe don't know this process is happening. So that community input piece has to expand beyond the 2 or 3 dozen people who have been attending the last several meetings. Maybe, you know, getting some children and youth input and families and people without children, and, you know, trying to get a good cross section of the community to have a response, not just the people who have been attending the meetings, kind of breaking out beyond that a little bit. But there's a lot of other people in this who have attended the exact same meetings I have and may have a different perspective.
So if I could just interject for one moment, back to Sean's point about playing to our strengths on the committee role. I've made it clear that I don't really have more disposable time to be a part of the committee, and frankly, I think I'm so biased that I really should not be a part of the committee. However, if I can lend my own personal experience, I have a lot of experience in interviewing and hiring folks. I'm happy to write up some interview questions, and even help conduct interviews with the members of the committee, to help sort of separate the wheat from the chaff. I do have a lot of experience as a managerial role, sizing people up and really understanding how to interview a candidate. So that's just something that I would like to put out there for the group, without committing to being on the search committee.
And Anna, could I just respond to your question in the sense that I think we could work on both the job description and the vision for the library simultaneously. And I think that the director would be the one who interprets the vision, but I think we could do them and they could dovetail.
I'm noticing what time it is right now, and if we're kind of, I realize that we're really just looking at the question for the next month and then thinking that then we would kind of set things after that. And I also, Kathy, you're right. You know, starting from the date that we think we need to have somebody hired and working backwards, I think would be ideal. I think that unfortunately that the date that at one point we were looking at was the March town meeting date. And that if we tried to work backwards from that, we're essentially putting the entire search, interviews, hiring piece into 1 month, which I don't personally think is possible. I mean, I don't think we should drag it for much more than that. But that maybe at that February time, we figure out what the real end date is going to be and how we're going to deal with that. And, you know, how long the people who are staying on past retirement are staying on and so forth at that point, maybe. And then come up with the schedule for the next phase at that point, which would be the whole multiple step hiring piece and what the steps, the timeline of those steps would be. So I was just looking at the agenda now, the last item on the agenda, and I think that some of this has become the first committee meeting, but it was to set the date for the first committee meeting. So that February date was meant to be not the first committee meeting date, but the kind of the first deadline where information would be discussed with the trustees and so forth. So if we're saying that that's February 9th, and I guess this would be primarily the committee who would come up with this, but to set a date for the first actual committee meeting, which might be attended by me if I need to be there for budget, and Mark if he's going to be, you know, that there's other people who might attend that meeting.
Is it possible to avoid select board meeting dates for these meetings? Or is that not a concern to other people?
Did you say avoid them? Is that what you just said?
Avoid, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
It's you skipped. That's all.
I
Yeah,
think
sure.
that is such an important consideration, Kathy. I lobbied to push this meeting back because whether or not we have children in the schools, I mean, the school discussion last night was so important, and I really think it's a conflict of interest, and I think we should consider that.
So February 9th is a regular select board meeting date. I have found.
Oh, okay.
I have found that those are really important meetings for more community members to be at. So I would encourage community members to take a look at those agendas and consider being there. And I'd hate to have to make a choice, and I would be committed, I think, to this committee work first. And I know you can never schedule dates that have no conflicts, but the select board is so integral to the library work that I would propose not scheduling committee meetings on select board meeting dates.
How about Wednesday the 10th?
Yeah, I mean, I would second that.
And I'm going to look at the school board meeting date. Hold on.
Okay.
So right now I'm attending FBUD
See,
select
we
board.
own Monday, and it was the select board who took our Monday away. Like what you're saying, select board gets Tuesday. So, you know, and
Well,
but they had reasons for doing it. But
I think that was a special meeting that was required pre-vote, and they wanted to have it on the Monday that people are used to having for community info sessions before a vote. So I don't think they'll be doing that again or soon.
No, it's fine. And I understand that there's this vote on Saturday, and that's such a big thing, but it was like, but we have Mondays. We had scheduled it already before we knew.
Can you remind me what the library's regular meeting schedule is? Monday the what? Like the what Monday?
Second Monday of the month.
If it's the second Monday of the month, could this committee still do Mondays, but just not do the second Monday of the month? And then it will never conflict with school board or select board unless there's a town meeting coming up and they have a special meeting.
Oh, so what are we going to do for the again?
I move for first Monday of the month.
I don't feel like that's enough time.
Okay.
Because as I said, I mean, if the committee thinks it is, because
that was February 1st, Mark, and that was the one that people said not to do.
Well, I was.
Oh, okay. All right. I got you, gang.
So we're doing two things right now. So one was rescheduling the meeting that was conflicting with the select board. Kathy, is it also conflicting with school board?
The school
If we do
board,
the 10th?
the school board, I'm just looking at my calendar right now. The school board is meeting, so hold on, it was January 13th. I don't have February in my calendar yet, but it's probably the 10th. I think it's the second Wednesday of the month is their regular meeting.
Okay, Thursday the 11th?
Can I just
I'm
say-
not even looking at my-
Thursdays work great for me, but I'm just one person.
So the joint meeting on Thursday, February 11th?
So wait, are we scheduling, can the committee, so hold on, can the,
The committee has to meet before then.
I'm confused. Can't the, okay, so the library trustees could say by this date for our meeting, the committee should be ready for a report or have some asked done, but couldn't the committee separately over email schedule our meetings together?
So Kathy, I thought so one thing that we were doing was setting a timeline, and that initial date of February 1st, which became February 8th, was the timeline for all of this step one to happen.
So
and I was thinking that it would happen at a meeting that people could attend. Then it turned, I mean, could we do that at a regular trustee meeting? Because that's February 8th. Do you think that would be too much to do at a regular trustee meeting?
And I'm thinking to be efficient, the committee could put around a doodle poll or something and schedule their meetings. But if the trustees are saying we want something done by a date, I would put that on your trustee meeting date.
Right. Oh, okay. So
I mean, I don't know what other committee members think, but otherwise the trustees, are you saying would all need to come to 2 meetings back to back, or?
That's what I thought we'd be doing.
Oh, I think that based on this meeting is now an hour and a half, and we often run over an hour just for our regularly scheduled things that we have in our meeting. I'm not sure that doing both at this, I mean, instead of having 2 meetings, it would mean a very long meeting.
And unless you give the committee, you have 15 minutes to report. I think tonight feels a little unusual in, the trustees could have come with a written just committee description, but you opened it up to the whole group. So it was a lot of great conversation. But I mean, I'm hoping there's some efficiencies moving forward with how things happen, and you could give the committee a 15-minute slot on a meeting to report out and ask questions.
The only problem with that is we've already posted the agenda for Monday's meeting.
No, this would be Monday, the 8th, Fern, the 8th of February.
Oh, February, I'm sorry. Sorry.
So why don't we do that? So let's go back to the 8th and say that 2/8 is the deadline for coming back to the trustees with some information. And then the other agenda item for tonight was to come up with a date for the first committee meeting, which is different.
And Kathy, could you send a doodle poll out to the committee and we'll answer that way?
So Eve, does that have to be, because it's on the agenda for tonight, do we have to decide it right now, or can we do a doodle poll and let you know?
We can have that be the decision, that it will be decided with input from the members of the recently
because if
appointed committee.
If all 5 trustees don't need to be a part of that process, I don't know why we need to do it now, but Teresa also was raising her hand.
I just kind of working it from both ends. We're saying we need to have a date of when we might want to have this whole process completed, and then at the beginning end of it, can we have a sense from the trustees as to when we can have access to the information we need to get started?
This week.
So then is there a reason why we're putting off the 1st, or do we want to still do a pool? Because that would give us a meeting of the subcommittee time before that first that February trustee meeting. So we could have some pretty good feedback for you. I would like to think that's, it's 3.5 weeks. It's a solid 3 weeks.
There is a question about the open meeting laws too. If we're going to go with that as our reference, these meetings would have to be warned, and the agendas of the committee meetings have to be warned and the agenda posted. a week ahead of before the meeting. So
Yes, so the way I understand it, committees absolutely have to comply with open meeting law.
yes, absolutely.
So we, so
Well,
for,
committee, can I just throw this out? How about the 18th? It's a Monday. It would give us time to post things. Does that work? January 18th, the Monday?
That's, well, it's a holiday.
I'm open like a good book. I mean, it works for me, but whatever works for everyone else.
so is this for the first committee meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, is that,
Martin Luther King, but that's okay. I mean,
it's about as early as we can get, right? If we're doing Monday nights and we need to post things.
Yeah, that.
right, because it's the Monday after the next trustee meeting. Not that the trustees are involved, but because Fern has to be at both meetings, she can't,
Yeah.
it can't be at the same time.
January 18th, I'm looking at my calendar that I like the idea of sticking with Mondays of the other committee members, if that works for them. The 18th works for me. So then that means we have 3 weeks after that to get everything that you asked for by the February 8th meeting. Which I'll need a reminder of exactly what that was. There's been a lot of discussion and I've like stored so much of it, but I'm not sure what all the final decisions are on some of these pieces. So I kind of need to look at the minutes myself.
I would say yes to staying on Mondays and yes to at least starting the process, even if we have a brief meeting. There's plenty of time for it to be warned, and at least we could start and maybe get a better sense of where the 7 of us committee people are and how we want to, efficiently get this done.
Great, yeah.
Yeah.
That works.
Good.
Yeah. And you guys, is there a volunteer to post it and post the agenda?
Well, I'm
No,
wondering.
that would be the trustees. That
Yeah.
would be my job.
Oh,
wondering
great.
if that would be Fern's role. I would hope so, because you have access to making sure it's on the website and you kind of have an official role for
Perfect.
I do post them
making
in
sure
it.
it's right and complying with everything.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. 7 o'clock?
That works for me.
Okay. And who's hosting the Zoom meeting?
The library is who hosts these. But the other thing too is if Fern is responsible for posting them, I think someone on the committee needs to be responsible for the agenda rather than Fern.
Does it have to be on Zoom or can we use Google Meet? I don't have a paid Zoom account and I've tried to avoid so far getting one. But Google Meet is free and accessible to anybody and has no limit on time. The school board.
Either one's good.
It would have to be something that you would be comfortable posting to be shared with anybody who would possibly want to attend the meeting.
Okay,
So if it's your personal account, I'm not sure if you want to go there.
I take that back. I don't recommend anyone using their personal account for that then, because so that's a question. That's a logistical question. Can the library, I don't know what the expectations are of library staff that host the meeting, adding on the committee meetings. But I have noticed in some of these meetings, there can be a lot of community members and there can be a need to kind of moderate the chat. There were a couple of times that happened on meetings I saw. So I'd prefer not to use a personal login and publish a personal link for that. So it seems like it should be an official Tunbridge Public Library Zoom account then.
That's something we'll have to discuss with Ben because he's
Who
the
I believe is on the meeting.
host. He's,
Ben, are
he
you
was-
here?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry about that. Just having something to eat. I was listening. We can, so far the Zoom account only it sort of only has one login, entry thing, and I'm fine with this came up before, and you know, I'm fine with facilitating it. I'm also fine with, if in a way that the trustees feel comfortable with, if there's, you know, another way to administer the account, that's cool, you know. So if someone else wants to, if the trustees feel comfortable handling it another way, that's fine as well.
And I think Zoom allows co-hosts too, where you can give someone else hosting. You might not be able to like have multiple logins, but you can give someone else co-hosting privileges so that they could deal with, like, for example, the library posts their links publicly on your website, and you're really not supposed to do that because then so there needs to be somebody that has the ability to remove someone from the Zoom, who's at the meeting. Not that I'm expecting anything to happen, but hey, it happened to the Egg Committee at the Vermont State Legislature. So I feel like, yeah, it's in Vermont, people Zoom bomb here. So I don't know. I think that would be something you would need to sort out when you're posting the warning for the meeting, is how to host it.
I don't know how to make it publicly accessible without posting it somewhere. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
The select board does that too. The school board does not. They do not post public links. They post a public call-in number, and you have to email the IT director or a school board chair in order to get the link. And then they get to hand it out, and they put a little disclaimer in it that says, please do not share this link with anyone. They need to contact us to get it.
That sounds like a passel of work to make sure that everybody who wants it gets it.
So, yeah.
When we started doing the Zoom account for the library at the beginning of COVID, we were weight rooming everything.
Yeah, and
as a way of avoiding Zoom bombing.
And that was admittedly not done tonight, and it's because maybe I'd gotten. It probably goes back to when we weren't having many people like attending, but that is a good way to do it, and that really necessitates someone really paying attention, because it's so. You have to always be watching to see if someone's in the room. But yeah, that could be done.
I guess it's up to the library, all those details. I just think for the committee, I don't think a personal video conference account should be used. I think it should be an official library account.
That makes sense. And I'll ask Mariah if she's had better success or someone else has Zoom experience. The basic account that we have, I can't figure out how to integrate a co-host. I guess I can make a co-host once the meeting started.
That way, if you didn't need to be in the meeting, Ben, you could give turn, or we could rotate, and there could be someone who's like responsible for things, hitting the
like that.
Button, and then you could just turn everything off, and that person, I think, can end the meeting. They when it's over, they can end it. So
well, that sounds like a good plan. And let me run through a tutorial to make sure I got that straight, and we'll make it work for the next meeting. Yeah. Yeah, and someone just commented, you know, the ease with getting the meeting link is important for a public posting, and it is. Well, I guess I don't have any experience kicking anyone out, but I'm told that it's possible and not that hard. So I hope I never would do it, and hope no one would have to do it for a meeting like this. So, but
one nice thing too is these meetings are not aired live, and I think the legislative meetings are, so it's a much bigger issue for them. They're aired live on YouTube, so you can, even though they're on Zoom, they're aired live. So if there's a Zoom bomber, it's a much bigger deal.
Well, I think this is a very big deal here, though. No, I'm just kidding.
It is a big deal.
Yeah.
But I hear what Eliza's saying. You've got to balance out ease of access with risk.
Yep.
So we're at 8:45 almost. Are we set? We know that when the next committee meeting is going to be. I think that we have does the committee feel that they've got enough of an idea of what's happening for the next month? I think the trustees need to get information to the committee as soon as possible. So job descriptions, I guess, are people comfortable with me just giving Teresa what I've got if she wants to be the budget person? Is Teresa comfortable with me giving Teresa what I've got? So I guess are we all set? I guess is my question. Are people?
Can I ask that just by way of like introduction, can you send an email around to those of us on the committee so that we all have each other's emails, and maybe those of you on who are trustees, so that we're not trying to find people on Facebook or something? That would be helpful.
Certainly, no problem.
Thank you.
Anna, we all of the trustees have access to the trustees account. So that might be the best way to contact us, because that way, if you need to contact more than, I mean, you may not know which of us to contact. So if you
Great.
send it to her,
Thank
we can
you.
all go in there.
Okay.
Is the email that we have, I guess, Fern, could you do that?
18th of January?
Pretty obvious if his first agenda.
You can input information into that agenda, and then it will be sent out to the public
Okay.
from there. That's generally how we
I
operate.
like that idea. And then we just make sure it's done in time to be posted and warned on time. Okay.
And
Love it.
Fern, if I remember correctly from posting the meetings when I was trustee, is it 5 days or 7 days prior to?
5 days.
5. Okay.
I usually do it like 3 or 4 days, but 5 is the maximum days for posting.
And maybe we can talk about this at that first meeting, but if this committee has tasks and timelines, is there, and the meetings are warned and they're posted and they're open, can the committee establish protocol for public input? To like, I know some municipal organizations in town have like public comment on the agenda. Some have it at every agenda item. The select board doesn't have it listed at all, so you just have to kind of chime in. Is there, I haven't noticed what the trustees have used. It seems like you've been really open, but you also haven't been used to having a lot of public at your meetings.
Normally it's the first agenda item. It's just kind of like we have a blanket schedule that we fill in, and the first item on it is community input.
Okay.
You don't have to do that, but that's what's been traditional for the trustees.
Okay, so we can work that out when we get the agenda, but I just wanted to ask if the trustees had a policy on that.
I can send out the Google Doc basic agenda, and then everyone can add to it before we publish.
And this committee doesn't have the authority to make decisions on behalf of the trustees. So I would guess there's not like a lot of action items in terms of like, we have tasks to do, but not really decisions to make. Is that the understanding for the committee? So the decisions would go back to the trustees?
I guess you could decide on a recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you'd consider
Yeah,
that.
I'm not sure if that's considered like an action item.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking back to, is this committee even have executive session? I didn't picture this committee really having any of those roles that the actual trustees would have, so that these meetings will be a little less formal, I think, in some ways than a trustee meeting would be.
Yeah, I don't think you're not, non-trustees committees can't, to my knowledge, cannot have executive meetings. It's only a trustees.
I think if we focus our group on our tasks and set our agenda, prioritizing, or maybe they're sequential, we need this piece taken care of before we can move on. And then the close of the meeting be open for community input, because we may be answering a lot of people's questions or concerns while getting through our own work. As much as we welcome the community input, and I think having this committee already with community members on it, we've already opened that door, and hopefully community members would feel comfortable speaking to any of us individually as well. But I think if we kind of just stay task oriented, keep this process moving, and then, okay, we've put out everything we've been up to, anyone questions, concerns, and then everything would be documented, and then the agenda could, move at a nice pace, and we'd still have that community piece. Does that sound like a reasonable approach?
Should we move to adjourn?
I would, Eve, I've got I gotta go check on Birdie. I got a little one I gotta go check on, and I'm getting pretty tired here, gang.
So I move to adjourn. Somebody second?
I second that.
In favor? I don't know if I can say that if I did the original motion.
Oh, I'm in favor.
Yeah.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Billy?
Aye.
Good work, team.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you all to everyone who's been participating these past few weeks. It's really quite inspiring.
Good night, all.
Night.
Night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night.